Jake Vance eased his aging Honda Civic off the bustling avenue and onto the narrow turnoff marked Maple Drive, the GPS's cheerful voice still chirping directions in his ear. He'd been hired by a local magazine to photograph hidden gems of the city's residential enclaves, ivy-clad facades, winding driveways, secret gardens. Yet as he guided the car beneath a tangled canopy of ancient oaks, the streetlights overhead flickered in the early dusk, and the Civic's headlights revealed row upon row of near-identical homes. Stately brick townhouses with wrought iron gates, trimmed hedges and driveways too pristine for everyday life. Jake glanced at the GPS screen. Recalculating. Turn left in 200 feet, it repeated. Confident he'd followed the instructions correctly, he pressed the indicator and rolled forward. But instead of a left, he found only a dead-end cul-de-sac, its circular lane highlighted by a single street lamp and the looming darkness beyond. He pulled to a stop, navigation still insisting, turn around when possible. With a sigh, he swung the wheel to circle the cul-de-sac, tires crunching on the gravel edge. But as he approached the same row of houses, the GPS beeped again and directed him back the way he'd come. In 100 feet, turn right, it ordered. But the right turn led him back to the very spot he'd just left. Confusion prickled at the back of his neck. He tried another turnoff, the gravel path narrowing between two hedges, only to find a locked gate and a patrolling security guard advancing toward him under the sodium yellow lamp. Jake clicked off his engine and climbed out, camera bag slung over his shoulder. The guard, a broad-shouldered man in a crisp navy uniform, crossed his arms and leveled a cool stare. "Sir," he said, voice low, "this is private property. You need to leave." Jake raised his hands in a placating gesture. "Sorry, I'm lost," he said, pulling out his phone to show the compass app. "My GPS routed me here. I'm Jake Vance, freelance photographer, just trying to find the end of the street so I can get back to the main road." The guard's lips curved in something like pity. "That's not a street. This is the Oaks, an exclusive enclave. You shouldn't be in here without an invitation." Behind him, the gates clicked closed, metal bars moving in the frame of the street lamp's glow. The home facades lining the circle seemed to lean in, their windows dark and watchful, hedges bristling like sentries. Jake studied the scene. Every mailbox bore the same unmarked post. Every driveway led to an identical set of double doors. No names, no numbers, just the uniform elegance of security cameras and keypad-locked gates. His pulse quickened. A hidden gem chute had become a disorienting labyrinth. He set his jaw. "I understand," he said, voice steadier than he felt. "I'll leave." He climbed back into the Civic, but as he shifted into reverse, his GPS chimed again. "Proceed to highlighted route," and drew a bright yellow line circling back into the enclave, pinpointing a single unassuming gate at the far end. One he hadn't noticed. Curious despite himself, Jake followed the route, tires crunching over another gravel drive until he arrived at a lone arched entrance, its gate ajar. The address popped up on his screen. Private estate. 0 Maple Drive. His breath caught. 0 Maple Drive? The street had no numbered houses. Whoever owned 0 had to own everything else. Jake felt the familiar thrill of a story breaking beneath his fingertips. He killed the engine, pocketed his phone into his satchel, slung his camera over his shoulder, and stepped forward into the shadows beyond the gate, determined to discover who had quietly bought the entire block and why a simple wrong turn had led him into the heart of their secret. Jake parked the Civic just beyond the wrought iron gate and killed the engine. But the moment he opened his door, he felt the street's curiosity press in on him like a tide. Behind the hedged boundaries of each estate, porch lights snapped on one by one, casting long shadows across manicured lawns. From recessed entryways and behind lace curtains, pairs of eyes watched his every move. He lifted his camera bag and stepped onto the gravel drive, the stones crunching under his feet so loudly they sounded like sirens in the quiet night. No more than 10 paces brought him to a tall figure blocking the circular lane, a guard in crisp navy fatigues, boots polished to a mirror shine. His name tag read Anderson, but his tone was all command. "Sir," he barked, voice echoing off brick facades, "you've wandered onto private property. State your business." Jake swallowed and raised both hands, palms out. "Sorry, I'm lost. My GPS rerouted me here," he said, voice calm but firm. "I'm a photographer for Landmark magazine. I have credentials." He shifted his satchel to flash his badge and saw the guard's jaw tighten, eyes narrowing into slits of distrust. Behind him, a pair of neighbors emerged onto a stoop. A middle-aged woman in high heels and a man in a cashmere sweater, his arms folded across his chest. Their door stood half open, as though they'd been ready to close it the instant he appeared. The woman hissed, "There's nothing for you here," and the man stepped forward. "This isn't some public park. You need to leave." Jake hesitated, camera hanging at his side. "All I want is a photo or two of the architecture. Your homes are beautiful. Don't patronize us," the guard cut in. He reached for his radio, thumb hovering above the button. "Corporate cameras don't belong in here." He gestured to the Civic parked by the gate. "License plate check's been called in. You're detained until we clear you." The neighbors crouched behind potted ferns and clipped hedges, whispering to one another. Jake caught fragments. "He looks like, you know, probably just casing the place." He realized the color of his skin, his dark coat against their ivory walls, had marked him as a threat. Heat rose behind his collar. "I'm not casing anything," he said, voice steady but edged with hurt. "I came to photograph the facades for a feature story. Here's my contract," he added, sliding a glossy letterhead across the guard's outstretched palm. The guard flipped through the pages but didn't soften. "Only authorized guests get in. You don't." He reached toward the gate control panel on the guard's belt. "You'll have to wait for management." Jake pressed his lips tight. The neighbors retreated inside, slamming doors until only their slivers of light remained. The guard's radio crackled as he spoke into it, and Jake felt the night thicken around him, closing off every avenue of escape. He took a slow breath, squaring his shoulders. "Then let's wait for management," he said. "And while we do, maybe you can tell me who owns these houses. My GPS shows 0 Maple Drive. This must be the parcel. Who's the buyer?" The guard's eyes flicked to the half-open doors as the distant click of locks sounded in reply. In that pregnant moment, Jake realized he'd changed from accidental trespasser to unwelcome outsider defined by suspicion. His only ally, the single coordinate that might yet unlock the secrets behind each towering gate. Jake's shoulders tensed as the guard's radio crackled to life in the hush of the cul-de-sac. He watched the red and blue LEDs pulse against Anderson's navy uniform, felt the weight of every ornate gate and shadowed window bearing down on him. The night air had grown colder, and the pale glow of porch lights shimmered on the brick facades like sentinels, silent observers to his predicament. A second security officer appeared from the side entrance of one of the homes, his polished shoes scuffing the gravel. He crossed his arms and regarded Jake with cool indifference. "Sir," he said, voice clipped, "we've got a report of an unfamiliar vehicle. You'll need to identify yourself and explain your presence here." Jake raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I've already shown you my press credentials," he said, voice low. "I have a contract with Landmark Magazine to shoot residential architecture, just exteriors. My GPS led me in. I'm not here to trespass." Anderson exchanged a glance with his colleague, then muttered into his radio, "Subject claims press assignment. Confirm with management." He turned back to Jake. "Wait here." Left alone in the center of that perfect stone circle, Jake's heart pounded. He set his camera bag on the gravel and rubbed the bridge of his nose. The hum of distant traffic along the main road felt a world away. He noticed for the first time the absence of street numbers on any mailbox or doorway. No names, no plaques, only the gleaming steel and imposing hedges. "Odd, isn't it?" a voice murmured from the shadows. Jake startled, pivoting to see a gray-haired man peering around the corner of a neighboring driveway. The man wore a tailored blazer over slippers, as though he'd come outside mid-evening to check on something. His eyes, dark and wary, flicked between Jake and the guard's radio. I don't know," Jake admitted, slipping his hands into his jacket pockets. "I'm just trying to get out." The man nodded, stepping forward so moonlight caught the lines of his face. "No one around here does much besides look," he said in a low tone. "But there's talk. Someone bought up half the block in cash. No names on public records yet. All we know is the residences used to be individually owned. Then, overnight, every deed transferred to a shell corporation." Jake's breath caught. A shell corporation? He crouched to examine the gravel, as though secrets were hidden there. "Do you know the name?" The neighbor shook his head. "They called it Thornton Enterprises in the whisper chain. But no one's ever heard of that name. It doesn't show up in property registries." He glanced over his shoulder, lips compressed. Security's tight. They don't want questions. I've lived here 20 years. I've never seen anything like it. Before Jake could press further, Anderson reappeared, folding his arms. Management wants to see your credentials again, he said. Come with me. The neighbor offered a sympathetic nod and retreated into the gloom. Jake hefted his bag and followed Anderson to the guardhouse, a small brick outbuilding at the cul-de-sac's edge. Inside, under the harsh glare of fluorescent tubes, a clipboard lay on the counter next to a ringing phone. Anderson retrieved Jake's press pass and ran it beneath a handheld scanner. While the machine beeped, Jake peered through a slit window at the guard's bulletin board plastered with official memos. Visitor protocol, emergency evacuation plan, and an unmarked typed flyer. All guests must be pre-authorized by a state. Management. Violators will be detained. He frowned. It seemed impossible that a monthly magazine assignment could be so unauthorized. The scanner clicked again, and Anderson handed back the badge. You're cleared to leave, he said, voice gruff. Turn right at the gate and follow the main road. Don't come back. Jake exhaled and shouldered his camera. Thank you, he said, voice steady but brimming with curiosity. Before I go, any chance you could tell me who owns this place? I'm writing a feature on undisclosed private developments. Anderson's expression hardened. He tapped the side of his walkie-talkie. Move along, he said, eyes returning to the monitors, tracking every entrance. Outside, Jake walked back toward the Civic, mind racing. The gravel drive mashed against his shoes as he replayed the neighbor's words. Thornton Enterprises, Shell Corporation, all deeds transferred overnight. The hush of the cul-de-sac had become a chamber of secrets. When he reached the gate's keypad, his GPS pinged again, highlighting a single point beyond the shadowed arch. He tapped the Directions button. Proceed to 0 Maple Drive. The Civic's engine growled as he climbed in, hands still trembling on the wheel. Jake punched Thornton Enterprises into a property search app on his phone. No results. He tried local business registries. Still nothing. Only one listing appeared under 0 Maple Drive in the city's tax database, marked Owner Unknown with a blank contact line. His pulse raced as the Civic rolled past the gate, the enclave's iron bars sliding shut behind him with a resonant click. As he rounded the corner back to the main avenue, his camera bag felt heavier, laden with unsolved questions. Who was Ellis Thornton IV? Why had they silenced the records? And how far would they go to keep their acquisition and their identities buried behind those unmarked gates? Jake's next move was clear. If the neighborhood refused its secrets, he would unearth them himself. With dawn still hours away, he settled back into the driver's seat, determination ignited. His wrong turn had become a story that stretched far beyond architecture, and he intended to follow every crooked street until the final gate swung open. Jake returned to his cramped motel room long after midnight, the glow of his laptop screen the only light in the silence. He opened his mapping app and zoomed out until the entire cul-de-sac at 0 Maple Drive blinked into view. Then, with a click, he switched from the street map to the satellite layer. The homes he'd driven past mere hours ago appeared as neat rectangles, their brick roofs and clipped hedges laid out like a dollhouse beneath him. But at the circle's far edge, with no numbered driveway and no street lamp marking its entrance, he saw something different. A smooth gray arc cutting through the grass, like a hidden racetrack. Leaning forward, Jake toggled the app's 3D view and tilted the screen. The arc resolved itself into a circular driveway, wide enough for 2 cars to pass, paved in dark asphalt and edged by low granite curbs. No home appeared within its bounds. The center was a perfect lawn, unmarred by landscaping or decoration. He placed his finger on the center point. The GPS read 38.8974 DGN, 77.0369 DW. A small pin dropped onto the map with the label Unincorporated Private Property. His pulse quickened as he opened a second tab to a public tax parcel viewer. He searched those coordinates and watched the parcel's footprint highlight in red. The adjacent lots bore owner names: Smith, Rodriguez, Lee. Yet this central circle was simply listed as Lot 0, owner unknown, assessed value blank. No deed history, the sidebar noted. Contact county recorder. Jake printed screenshots of the satellite view on his portable photo printer, then studied them under the motel's yellow lamp. He marked the circle's entrance, an unassuming break in the hedge line between two identical gates. He traced the curved drive's edge, imagining how it must look at ground level. An invitation to nowhere, an emblem of secrecy. Still restless, he decided to reconnoiter on foot before dawn. Bundling into his jacket, he returned to the Civic and eased back onto the main road. The overnight air hung damp with dew, and the only other vehicle was a security sedan parked near the cul-de-sac entrance. Jake slipped his camera bag onto his back, locked the car, and slipped through the unguarded hedge gap. His boots pressed softly on the grass as he approached the circular drive's lip. From the center, he could just make out the silhouettes of street lamps surrounding the ring, one every 30 yards, casting pools of light that rippled across the lawn. He crouched behind the granite curb and raised his camera to capture the scene. No address plaque, no house in sight, only the silent circle and the gates beyond, their wrought iron finials outlined against the deeper black of trees. He circled clockwise, heart thudding, pausing at each lamp to photograph the entranceway it illuminated. At one lamp, he noticed a small bronze placard affixed to the curb. The digits 0, stamped in fine relief. He knelt, fingertips brushing the cool metal. The number 0, not 10, not 7, just 0. A statement of ownership more absolute than any name. From his hip, Jake drew his GPS watch and recorded the exact coordinates of each lamp. Points in a perfect circle with a 70-foot radius. He logged them into his mapping app to verify the symmetry. It was flawless, like the arc of a compass or the approach to a private helipad. He glanced skyward, half expecting to see a helicopter skid into view, but only the deep velvet of pre-dawn hung above. As the eastern sky began to pale, Jake retraced his steps to the gate gap. He paused to press his ear to the wrought iron bars. Nothing but the whisper of leaves and the distant hum of the city. He lifted his camera one last time, zoomed to maximum, and captured the faint outline of a camera dome perched atop the gate's stone pier. His breath caught. Every inch of this circle was under surveillance, every moment recorded. Back in the Civic, he reviewed the images on the dashboard monitor. The circular drive, the bronze 0, the hidden cameras. He set his GPS for a nearby 24-hour diner and resolved to pore over the county records there. The dawn's first light spilled across the windscreen as he pulled away, the enclave's gates retreating behind him. In his mind, the satellite arc and the driveway's 0 lot converged into a single truth. Whoever controlled Lot 0 controlled them all. And with those GPS breadcrumbs guiding him, Jake knew exactly where to follow next. Straight into the heart of a neighborhood whose secrets lay buried beneath the asphalt of a perfect circle. Jake spent the rest of the pre-dawn hours parked outside a 24-hour coffee shop, nursing a black drip and rifling through public tax records on his laptop. The screen glowed with lines of municipal data, parcel numbers, assessor's maps, deed transfers, each row more bewildering than the last. But at last he landed on parcel 0, the circular lot he'd circled under street lamps, and saw a tiny link labeled Corporate Owner, Thornton Enterprises, Inc. He clicked through and held his breath. A Delaware incorporation date, a registered agent in Manhattan, but no other identifying details. By sunrise, Jake had tracked down the corporate filings. An Ellis Thornton 4, listed as sole director, no phone number, an email address that pinged back as unmonitored. His curiosity ignited, Jake typed Ellis Thornton 4 into a business news database. Nothing. Then he scoured professional networks. Again, silence. Finally, a single headline from a small tech blog, Thornton Enterprises raises $200 for covert urban redevelopment. The article quoted a venture capitalist praising Thornton's visionary purchase of under-the-radar properties, yet refused to name the neighborhoods. Jake's heart thudded. He printed the article, grabbed his camera, and drove to the city archives downtown. There, past narrow cement corridors and rows of yellowing ledgers, he found the microfiche of a 1920s subdivision. He loaded the vintage sheets into the reader and watched as tiny type revealed the lot's history. Once part of a development called Whispering Oaks Estates, each parcel owned by individual families, doctors, teachers, small business owners, until the late 1990s when 3 properties consolidated under a single trust. Now, in the last 2 months, 5 more deeds had transferred to that same trust, culminating in Parcel 0. He traced the trust's name, Thornton Family Real Property Trust, to a handful of legal briefs filed in a Supreme Court clerk's office. The briefs were redacted but unmistakable. Thornton Enterprises was suing neighboring municipalities over zoning changes, arguing for urban privacy rights and security imperatives. Jake jotted notes as his mind raced. Here was a legal strategy to erase any public record of the buyer's identity, to hide him behind corporate veils and trust instruments. By mid-morning, Jake's inbox overflowed with digital records, articles on Thornton's secretive luxury condo conversions in Brooklyn, an obscure SEC filing hinting at a Thornton Innovation Fund, and a city planning memo warning that several upcoming building permits lacked proper title chains. Piecing the puzzle together, Jake realized that Ellis Thornton IV wasn't just a passive investor. He was a master architect of clandestine real estate control, using shell entities to assemble a private enclave literally cloaked in secrecy. Armed with printouts and blinking cursor, Jake returned to his Civic and drove back to Maple Drive. This time, he didn't park at the curb. Instead, he rolled past the entrance and staked out a side street, camera set on a tripod. Hours passed before a sleek black SUV glided through the gate at dawn, tinted windows obscuring the occupant. Jake's fingers tensed on the shutter release as the SUV emerged from the circular driveway and slipped onto the main road. He captured the license plate, a private issue tag, and noted the SUV's brand, a custom-trimmed armored Escalade. When the gate clicked shut behind the SUV, Jake crept to the gate's security kiosk. Through its darkened glass, he glimpsed Anderson's silhouette, the guard seated behind monitors. Jake raised his badge, this time his magazines, with one hand and tapped a photo of the SEC filing on his phone with the other. Ellis Thornton IV, director. He needed confirmation that the man in the SUV was Thornton himself. "Open the gate," Jake said into the microphone with calm authority. "I have legal documents establishing ownership." Inside the guardhouse, the monitors flickered as Anderson replayed the SUV's exit. After a long pause, the guard pressed a button and the gate quietly swung open. Jake slipped in, heart hammering, and approached the granite curb, where the bronze zero placard gleamed in morning light. He lifted the SEC filing photo to the camera lens, framing the evidence next to the number 0, proof that the elusive owner of this circle was none other than Ellis Thornton IV. From behind him came footsteps. Anderson, arms crossed, face inscrutable. "You've got your proof," the guard said, "but Thornton doesn't like trespassers." Jake met the guard's gaze steadily. "I'm not here to trespass," he said. "I'm here to tell a story about how one man, one Ellis Thornton IV, quietly bought a neighborhood, hid behind corporate shells, and turned this place into his personal fortress." As he raised his camera to capture the 0 lot once more, Jake realized the true magnitude of his discovery. By following the GPS breadcrumbs, he had unmasked a figure who sought invisibility through power. And now, he held the map and the lens to expose the hidden face behind the gates. 2 nights later, Jake returned to the edge of the enclave just as dusk bled into twilight. The streetlights beyond the wrought iron gates cast long, jittering shadows across the gravel drive, and the hedges rustled in a breeze, scented faintly of jasmine and cut grass. He parked his Civic half a block away, climbed out with camera bag slung over one shoulder and a slim folder in hand, and approached the keypad at the gate's edge. His breath caught at the sight of the bronze 0 inlaid in the granite curb, an unspoken promise that he would soon confront the man who claimed ownership of it. He tapped the folder's corner nervously. Inside lay printed copies of the SEC filing naming Ellis Thornton IV as director of Thornton Enterprises, the county deed showing Lot 0, transferred to Thornton Family Real Property Trust, and a screenshot of the GPS coordinates pinned to the circular drive. He swiped his finger across the keypad screen, not to enter a code, but to take a photograph of the device, evidence that the drive was under active electronic control. As he did, the gate's metal bars slid apart with a low hydraulic hiss, revealing a uniformed guard stepping out from a shadowed sentry box. "Back again?" The guard, still Anderson, demanded, voice low and guarded. His posture was rigid, one hand resting on the grip of a radio clipped to his belt. Jake squared his shoulders and met his eye. "I have proof of ownership," he said, voice calm but carrying across the empty circle. He lifted the folder and let the moonlight catch the gold foil of the SEC cover letter. Ellis Thornton IV. For a heartbeat, Anderson's expression flickered between recognition and refusal. He reached for his walkie-talkie. "You're not cleared," he began, then hesitated as Jake pressed a printed deed into his free hand. Property records are public. Anderson flipped through the pages, brow knitting at the embossed signatures and county seals. These are authentic, he muttered, voice tight. Jake stepped past the guard and onto the asphalt ring. Each lamppost's halo of light revealed the perfectly manicured lawn at its center, and for the first time he saw the tiny camera dome mounted atop a hedge, its lens trained on him. He felt the weight of 100 watchful eyes behind those bars, but he refused to relent. "I'm not here to trespass," he insisted. "I'm here to document the truth. Thornton paid cash, transferred each deed, and built this private circle to vanish into. Now I know why." Anderson thumbed his radio again, then lowered his voice. "Hold on." He disappeared into the sentry box and returned moments later with a younger supervisor in a charcoal blazer, security manager by the name on his lapel tag, Mr. Cullen. Cullen's salt and pepper mustache and wire-rimmed glasses lent him an air of authority. He stepped onto the drive, took the folder from Anderson, and leafed through it under the lamplight. Jake watched his face soften as he reached the deed. "I'm sorry, Mr. Vance," Cullen said quietly, handing back the documents. "Your evidence checks out." He tapped the corner of the deed with a gloved finger. "Ellis Thornton IV is indeed the registered owner of this lot, and by extension, these homes come under his oversight." He set a walkie-talkie on top of the folder. "Don't call the police. If you need visuals, you have permission to photograph any exterior feature from public vantage points." Jake exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. He raised his camera to capture a final shot of the circle's curvature and the hedge perimeter closing around him like a stage. Then, with Cullen at his side, he retraced his steps through the widening gates. As he passed under the arch, Jake turned to snap one more image of the lock, its sturdy padlock gleaming under the gate's uplight, symbol of Thornton's hidden empire. By the time Jake returned to his Civic, the enclave was once again sealed in darkness. But he carried with him more than photographs. He bore the story of how a single GPS pin had led him through hostile glares, whispered rumors, and locked gates to the doorway of an untouchable magnate. With the truth unmasked, Jake knew the next chapter, publishing Ellis Thornton IV's secret dominion, would reverberate far beyond these silent hedges and perfect lawns. By first light the next morning, Jake was nursing a cup of strong black coffee at the diner when his phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. The screen displayed only 3 digits, 0DR. Curious, he swiped the call accept icon. A smooth, measured voice spoke. "Mr. Vance, this is Ms. Thornton. On behalf of Ellis Thornton IV, he would like to invite you to tour his new residential development today at 10 a.m. Please arrive at the main gate." Jake's heart skipped. After nights of trespass warnings and shadowed threats, the mysterious magnate was summoning him as a guest. He thanked the voice and stared at the receipt in his other hand, the last ghostly echo of a story he'd chased from GPS loops to satellite maps. He finished his coffee in a single gulp, paid the bill, and eased his Civic around to Maple Drive once more, anticipation thrumming with each tire rotation. At the gate, now devoid of its usual sentry, Jake parked under the same street lamp that had guided his initial intrusion. A sleek black limousine idled behind the iron bars, its tinted windows reflecting the rising sun. A uniformed attendant stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Mr. Vance, welcome. Mr. Thornton awaits you in the courtyard." He tapped the keypad with an access card, and the gates slid open on silent hinges. Inside, Jake followed a winding drive past the circular lawn until he arrived at a glass-walled pavilion set into the cusp of the ring. The low morning sun glinted off its faceted panels, illuminating a serene courtyard where fountains danced in perfect arcs. A cluster of sculpted benches ringed the water feature, and there, sipping espresso from fine-boned china, sat Ellis Thornton IV himself. He rose, tall and lean in a midnight blue suit tailored to perfection, silver hair brushed back from a high forehead. "Mr. Vance," Thornton greeted, extending a firm hand. His grip was confident but not overbearing, and his eyes, steel gray, alert, held a spark of genuine curiosity. "Thank you for unmasking my unexpected purchase." He gestured to the courtyard. "Welcome to our boreal circle." Over the next 2 hours, Thornton showed Jake through the heart of his secret domain. They strolled along paths lined with Japanese maple and thousands of white peonies, each bloom planted in meticulous symmetry. Thornton explained his vision: a network of smart home estates equipped with biometric security, self-sustaining solar roofs, and subterranean data centers. Privacy is precious, he said. I wanted to demonstrate that security need not be sterile or oppressive. Jake guided his lens over the minimalist door handles, the flush-mounted cameras that calibrated their field of view, and the hidden speakers projecting soft classical music across the lawns. Thornton described partnerships with leading architects and AI firms to create homes that adapted to occupants' biometrics. Doors that recognized your gait, thermostats tuned to your biometric signature. Jake realized this was no mere real estate play. It was a proof of concept for next-generation private living. At the center of the pavilion, Thornton poured fresh lemonade from a crystal pitcher. "You've earned that right," he said, handing Jake a tall glass. They toasted to honesty and curiosity. "Why reveal yourself?" Jake asked. "Why invite me in after all the warnings?" Thornton sipped and smiled. "You sought truth, not sensationalism. You followed breadcrumbs responsibly, never published until you could verify. That integrity is rare." As the morning waned, Thornton led Jake back to the limousine. "I'd like you to be our official visual chronicler," he said, handing Jake a card embossed with the arboreal circle crest. "Your photographs and narrative will introduce this community to the world, on your terms." He pressed a second card into Jake's hand, a VIP access badge granting entry to each estate, plus invitations to future design summits and privacy technology. Forums. Jake climbed into the limo, heart racing with possibility. As the gates closed behind them, he gazed back at Arboreal Circle's hidden depths, its secret now his to share. The GPS coordinates that once trapped him in loops had led him to a story far greater than architecture or scandal, a glimpse into the future of private living and a rare alliance forged by mutual respect. And as the limousine melted away down Maple Drive, Jake knew he was no longer an outsider lost in their neighborhood, but the trusted insider entrusted to reveal the carefully guarded world of Ellis Thornton IV.